Kia ora and welcome to another episode of The Leadership Lounge. I'm Katie, your host, and The Leadership Lounge is a space for healthcare leaders to take a breath, get a fresh perspective, get some ideas and inspiration for the work that they are doing, that you are doing every day. I get to work with leaders and their teams in all sorts of settings across the spectrum of healthcare, and it is truly a privilege and it is phenomenal. And the work that I do is there to ensure people feel supported and connected, optimistic and encouraged in the work that you are doing all the time. And this week's special episode, I feel so corny saying special episode. So I think this is episode number 50. Now there was somewhere along the line in the mid-20s a mess up with the numbering, in the fact that I had jumped an episode forward, and once you have named an episode in the podcasting world on the RSS feed or whatever that is all to do with as a particular number, I couldn't repeat it. So when I tried to correct it, it didn't work out. So let's just say, for all you detail people out there, if you want to count it, if I'm at 49 or if I'm at 51, whatever, we're going to go with it today, and we're going to say that this is episode number 50. That's what I'm saying. And I am delighted, proud and very excited that we've got to episode 50. And I say we because one of the things that has really stood out from doing this is this very much is a conversation. And I am still blown away by people, different people that I bump into or that email me or that connect with me, and they comment on it and they talk about listening to the podcast, and it really does blow me away, and it is definitely a we have got here. And it made me have that sort of moment of reflection around, okay, what has been the highlights of this? And I started out by making a list and looking at all the episodes and trying to look at it from a very sort of logistical kind of operational perspective around what have I talked about, what's been interesting. And then I sat down this morning and thought, yeah, but what have I actually learned from it? 50 episodes, you're celebrating this point. Let's do what you are often talking about, which is that idea of reflection, and go, okay, what have you, if you were reflecting on this, what has been the standouts? What have you learned? What have been your lessons, your takeaways? And so I think the first thing, and I've mentioned this a number of times, is this idea of getting started. And that I had put it off for quite a while. There was lots of barriers, and that point of just getting going. But there were some other things that I haven't talked about in terms of the just getting going. And this really relates to leading in healthcare. In the understanding why. The understanding why a podcast, why this, why the topic, all of that kind of stuff. And it's the same when you go into a leadership role. Why? Why do I want to go into a leadership role? I did a course a little while ago around human-centered design, and it was looking at supporting the new, in this instance, chargedness, but it would work and translate completely into any patient-facing first leadership role, that first rung of leadership on the leadership ladder, if you like. And it was a really interesting course because there was a real mix of people on it, and the ideas we came up with were not what I expected. And actually there was a big chunk of the work was around the thinking you do before you step into a leadership role, and the different drivers that we have for it, and how, if you think through different generations or different all sorts of different reasons, and your own values, all of that sort of stuff, different reasons for why you step into leadership roles. And so if you're going to get started in leadership, in the same way when I thought about getting started in doing this podcast, it was really being clear on why this podcast. So my why for the podcast was I was doing some learning and doing a course around creating regular content for people. And as you know, I've been writing the No Jedi email since 2016. So creating this content for people in the profession, in the healthcare sector, and for leaders in particular. What I gained from this course was this idea that it kind of challenged you to go, are the people that you are reaching, are they busy, have a lot on their plates, running around quite a lot? That kind of thing that really did, in a nutshell, sum up people that are working in healthcare. And so the suggested outlet for people that have got that kind of cadence or lifestyle or rhythm to their work was to do a podcast, because you've actually got quite a lot of emails to deal with, and I really appreciate anyone that has signed up to my regular email, because I know about the emails and how overwhelming the inbox can get. And so a podcast is a really useful mechanism for reaching people that are often on the go and have a lot on, and a number of people have said that. So that was my why, and it made me click out of all the reasons why I didn't want to do a podcast, or all the reasons why it was getting, all the things that were getting in the way of me doing a podcast, to realising it was not about me, and it was about the people I was in service of, and why. And so therefore it's this why, because this is going to be a useful medium for people to connect with and listen to. So it was getting started, but part of that getting started is understanding your why, is commitment, this decision to take action. And I think if you think about stepping into a leadership role, it is a massive commitment, and you are deciding to take action, and you've got to be really clear on why you're doing it, because it's not easy. And consistently delivering a podcast is also not easy. So that was the first thing that kind of stood out, the getting started. I'm really proud of getting started. And the second part is the keeping going. So like I said, delivering 50 episodes. This is season 3. We've had 2 breaks that have kind of sat around, either I was going on holiday or there was an actual holiday coming up. So I've kind of flexed around. There's not a set number of episodes per season. It's a lot about my energy as much as anything else, to be quite honest, but keeping going. And so this idea of commitment, that flow on of commitment around what you're doing and why you're doing it, but then the grit that requires, and the fact that there are going to be tough days. There are going to be days when it feels a bit harder. There are going to be days where it's not as flowy or not as easy, or you'll hit hiccups or challenges. So remember back to the time where it wasn't connecting me, that I'd made a mistake on the RSS feed, or I have no idea what I'm saying when I say those words. I hope you understand that. But it wasn't connecting through to Spotify or Apple, I don't think, but it was showing up, and I skirted around, I screamed out for help, and I went to lots of different places other than the actual help site on Spotify and Squarespace, and their help was actually phenomenal and sorted it all out, and I learned quite a lot, and they were really, really useful. So this idea of keeping going when you hit hiccups and getting help and considering different ways of doing things. So this idea of, in the keep going space, there's this idea of you have a plan, and it's a kind of an ish plan. It's not a set in stone, we can't deviate from this plan. It's a bit like the idea of hope. There's a belief and a hope that you are going to achieve a certain thing, but you are not set in stone or rigid around the way that you're going to get there. So again, connects back to that idea of why are we doing what we're doing, so that you can adapt and flex. And I would add in the word pivot, except I have a very good friend that tells me I'm not allowed to use the word pivot unless I'm playing netball. So this is about flexibility and adaptiveness. Now, you may have noticed a bit croaky voice. I've been a bit sick this last couple of days, and so I've delayed the recording of the podcast till I could actually speak and have enough energy to sit upright. But I wanted to make today's topic easier for me to talk about. So this actually coincided really well, beautifully, thank you, universe, in the fact that there wasn't a lot of research to do. This was my own reflections, and connecting my reflections on, as soon as I started writing my reflections down, I connected it instantly to stepping into a leadership role. I'm like going, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Because when you're in a leadership role, all sorts of things happen. All sorts of things every week, every day, right now in healthcare or around the world, all sorts of random things happening. And you've got to be able to connect with that context. You've got to understand it. You've got to be able to then go, okay, what does this mean for me? Where's my circle of control? What am I going to do differently? What do I need to change? Okay, are we still aiming about this? So there's a lot around this idea of grit, in the fact that you just have to keep kind of riding the wave, I suppose. It's a bit like learning to surf, or, whatever water-based analogy I'm going to come up with right now, around this idea that you may have a plan, you may have these goals, but things are going to happen, and we need to flex and adapt. Now, in my defence, interestingly, I was talking about how far in advance I record things or write things, and I don't do it. All the advice out there in the world in terms of this kind of stuff tells you should batch produce a whole load of stuff. And I am actually a little bit more responsive to conversations that I'm having and what's going on in the current context, I suppose. And it's a plus and a minus, and I kind of wish I was a little bit more planned and advanced. And maybe for times like so, if I hadn't been well enough to record this in time, what would I have done? So having a couple in the bank would have been a good idea for me. And that's probably something I'm going to, in terms of reflection, which is what this is all about, right? It's kind of going, oh, okay, actually, this is the first time I've got super sick while the podcast has been due. Having a couple in the bank would be a really useful thing to have. So that's my learning from this reflection. But in terms of when you are leading and leading in healthcare, for having something in the bank, this is about, I think, it's about the relationships that we form. Because when you need someone, your team or people to do something, to shift and to pivot, oh no, Lord, I'm in trouble, I said pivot, or to adapt or to flex or to suddenly take on a new project, you've got to have the relationship space, the trust, all of that stuff in the bank. And I think this is where people miss the point of the relationship building. Because the relationship building that you are doing now isn't getting you anything today. It gets you something in 6 months' time. It's all investment. And when we are in a healthcare system that is skewed towards the reactive space, the let's manage these beds here and now, let's manage this, let's hit this target now, let's deal with today's crisis rather than understanding what is driving that crisis or what the real problem is, we forget that forming relationships takes time, building trust takes time. You can't just turn this around on a dime. So that's the equivalent of the having something in the bank. You need to do those things, and they need to be done sort of so that you've got deep relationships with people. If you think about when we've talked about the idea of network, one of the components of a decent network is that you've got deep relationships with people. So that's an important component of it. So that was the connection I made there with having something in the bank. You can tell my brain's working slower today, can't you? Nothing like keeping it real. Overall, when I look back at the reflection notes that I made around the getting to 50 episodes and the different topics and all of that kind of stuff, and when I made these notes, it really all kept coming back to a core thing around who I'm in service of. And I was explaining to someone the other day that I actually sit here and talk like I am talking to an actual person. In fact, right now, there's a little Lego figure, and that's who I look at, and I go, this is who I'm having the conversation with. And it is a myriad of all the different people that I know, that I've talked to, all of that sort of stuff. It's like we're having a real conversation. And it's because when I'm in service to people for what people need or want or what they're struggling with or what advice they're after or whatever it is they're trying to get through for the day, that is where I think some of my best work comes from. And I think that's exactly the same when we think about leading in healthcare. Because I think it was last week we posed that sort of question around purpose and what is the purpose of a healthcare system? Why do healthcare systems exist? And the well part of me wanted to go, that would be really interesting to go and do some Googling and researching around how it all came about, because I know there's a lot. I've got a very vague understanding of how some of our great public health systems started. But I think I'm on safe ground when I talk about the fact that they are of service to people who need something, the gaps that exist within society and the elements of equality and equity predominantly, and this idea of being of service to people, and that when people are sick or when they are needing some healthcare support, that it is a scary and a vulnerable time for people, and therefore we need competent and trained and caring and compassionate people that can meet those people where they're at and provide the level of care that they require and that they need and that they deserve as human beings. It kind of speaks right down to human rights around the fact that we all deserve that level of attention and care and compassion when we are not well. And I think this translates completely into stepping into a leadership role and this idea as to who are you there to serve. And yes, I don't disagree completely that a healthcare system is there to have the patient at the centre of what they're doing. But when you're stepping into a leadership role, it does require taking on attention that you have to hold in the fact that your job now is less about patients and more about the people that you are serving, whether that be your direct team, whether it be about whether you're leading leaders, in which case you have got several layers of people in front between you and the patients. Your job is now about those people, less about the patients. And it can feel difficult or contradictory or unsafe or uncomfortable to move from that space, but it is the work of stepping into a leadership role. It's relinquishing that level of, it's almost like relinquishing control of that and trusting people to be able to deliver that and creating the environment that they can do their best work. So it's a phenomenal experience and it's a phenomenally privileged place to be in because you're having now a greater reach, a greater influence, a greater impact as a leader from the direct patient care or the direct team that you're working with. So the knowing who you are of service to when you're stepping into a leadership role, who am I here to serve? Really important question. And I have instantly gone into an assumption that we are serving the people that report to us. That's how I've always considered it. And I think one of the challenges that is going on right now is that there is also an incredible, the political impact is creating a space where you have to serve the people above you as well. Now, this can run into dangers. Now, it's not about disrespect and it's not about ignoring people that are reporting to you without a doubt. It's understanding that within this system, there are different levers and different drivers at play. But you've also got to be, I guess you've got to make that distinction between what am I here to do as a leader and who am I here to serve? And what does service to the people up the system look like? What does that actually mean to be of service to people up the system? If it's telling them what they want to hear, I would question that's not service. I would question that's where we're going to run into trouble. That's where we see in all sorts of, when you have significantly bad events that have happened, that is often a common theme that has come out. So telling people what they want to hear, not so good. So there's lots of contemplating factors here through this reflection around stepping into leadership roles, this idea of commitment, making the choice to do that and taking action on it, but being really clear as to why you're doing it. Why now? Why this leadership role? Why you? What is it? And then that ability to keep going, whether that be through being adaptive and being flexible about having plans that you can shift and move around in, and being able to hold those things lightly as things get thrown about all over the place. But also being really clear as to who you're of service to and why that matters, and what does that look like in different directions around the hierarchy. I've not been too explicit in that one because I just feel I could dive into a complete rabbit hole around particularly the how you influence upwards and how you're of service upwards. So I think I will put it on that very famous list now of stuff that we will get to in all future episodes. So what I did notice when I started this was basically just capturing what have I done. And so I did actually... Again, a bit of Googling and searching around stuff because I thought, I just want a list. of all these episodes I've done and an easy to see on one-page summary. Well, that was not so easy to do, but I have cracked it. And so on the website, you will now, if you scroll down to the bottom of the podcast page, you'll see now an archive list. And so you can see all the episodes that are relatively almost one-page kind of one-page thing. Dear me. Should have had more coffee before starting this recording, maybe. And so you can click on all those different episodes. But what I then did was it really helped me categorize almost. Now, I've tried doing categories in the blog and it's not ever quite worked out. And I definitely don't think about categories when I'm doing my social media posts on LinkedIn or whether I'm writing my email. I really don't. And maybe I should, but it was an interesting exercise to do. And so I came up with 3 kind of categories that I write about or talk about or share things about. And it kind of makes sense when you think about what I've just shared around these ideas, around my reflections. So the first one is this idea of personal leadership development. So this is the first thing I tend to write about, which is this space of self-awareness, mindset, and the emotional intelligence, all those elements and those components that support you to show up as the leader that you want to be. And how that is not a one and done thing, that we're in this continual growth learning space as leaders. So personal leadership development was the first one. The second space was team and culture building. The content in here is a lot around those team communications or team dynamics and how you are as a leader are contributing to creating a culture that's great to work in, because we know that when we've got those type of cultures, we get, better retention, better engagement, we get better patient care delivery, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot in here around giving feedback, working together, celebrating, psychological safety, the environment, all of that kind of stuff kind of fits into that team and culture building. And then the last element, or the last category I put things into, someone very kindly named it, I thought it's quite a cool name, operational excellence in healthcare. And this is really about all the stuff, the work that you have to do. Now, the work that you have to do and how you manage that workload. So it's a lot in here around productivity, that sense of how on earth am I supposed to get it all done? How am I supposed to manage my emails? What am I doing when I feel completely stuck? What happens when I feel completely overwhelmed? A lot about that managing the workload, but also in here there's a lot about the space of the change. How are you leading change? What do you do when there are so many restraints placed upon you, or constraints? I had that trouble last time around, when we're living in, when resources are limited, I suppose, and how you stay focused and how you move to be more proactive rather than firefighting all the time. So 3 kind of categories. So that was a useful exercise for me personally, but I thought it was also quite a nice sum up to share with you. And you're like going, oh yeah, that, and then you can know, oh, I need more of that, or I need more of this, or I need to look into that. And so I will be able to start categorizing things a bit easier for you to find stuff that you're looking for on the blog and in other areas of the website. So we've got personal leadership development, we've got team and culture building, and we've got operational excellence in healthcare. All right. The brain and the voice is beginning to go. Thank you for bearing with me in this conversation this week. And thank you, huge thank you for all the comments, all the likes, all the follows, all the shares that this podcast gets. I am truly in awe and appreciative of it. It is a little humble little thing that I thought, hey, as long as one person listens to it, that'll be all right, eh? Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. I am so delighted. I'm proud of what we have accomplished in terms of the content, because I get ideas from you all the time. So please let me know if there's anything you really want me to dive into. Thank you again for listening along, and I will be back next week with another episode of the Leadership Lounge. You take care. You are probably, remember, doing a whole lot better than you think you are. Head up, deep breath, keep going. You have got this. See you next week.